Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. Today is Monday, and Dave Snell is one of our guests today, having a little bit of a repair issue at home. So, should be jumping on whenever possible. And chat's wide open. If you're there, love to hear from you and get to hear some thoughts, comments, questions. And if you'd like, this is a good show to possibly jump on and be on the show together today. Uh, let's see. We've got Dave. Well, hi, Dave. Dave's here with us right now. Great to see you, Dave. I just kind of opened the show, so you haven't really missed very much. And I was sharing that uh, uh, basically you're having some repairs today, so we're kind of winging it, uh, and and basically that's the cool thing about live streaming is you just never know
Yeah.
what's going to transpire. But we're going to make the best of the time we have together with Dave today, and would love to hear a little bit of an update. And the word of the day is, let me think.
Winning.
Winning. Great
Winning.
word. Great word. So, Dave, welcome to the show. What's your thoughts as of right now?
Well, first, my apologies. I thought this guy would be here earlier. They came here. I'm going to be here for a little while he does his work. Um, Great to be back again, as always. I find these very enthralling, these very insightful discussions, and fun to talk with you, Don, and whoever else we usually have on. Winning to me is kind of a nebulous term because it means something new to somebody differently every time. There's no one answer. For me, it means being better, a little bit better than I was the day before. And again, that's nebulous. How do you quantify better? Am I better financially? Am I better personally? There's no measure for that. It's a personal interior position, a mental position. And as long as we're moving the needle forward, so to speak, or a wet noodle uphill, sometimes it feels like, um, I think we've made progress and we're winning. It's a tough one to define, other than I have more points or more money than you. But if you don't define your life by money, then you can't beat somebody who there's no winning against somebody who doesn't measure it against money, if you will, if that makes sense. And I'm kind of rambling a bit because it is a tough term. We can look at scoreboards and see 28-14 and, oh, I have a winner, or they're ahead at a time. But it really gets nebulous when we start talking personality wise and who's winning. I have
Mm-hmm.
guys, some friends of mine who have, you know, $200,000 a year jobs, but they're miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have guys who live off their retirement pays from the military. Yeah. Are they happy? Probably happier.
Mm-hmm.
So are they winning? I don't know. It used to be that the joke was, he who dies with the most toys wins. Well, I think the guy who wins with the most friends and the most happiness and the least amount of problems wins. Money has very little to do with it over the time I've learned.
Yeah, well put. Because you make some great points, and the one that sticks out is winning is relative and conditional.
Yeah.
You could win today, but doesn't make you a winner in itself, except for the event or situation you just were fortunate to achieve. And the other element is balance.
Yeah.
So you could win in one area and lose in everything else. And I wouldn't consider someone winning at that point. I would say someone's really hitting the high marks in maybe an initiative or a situation. But I do think ultimately what you said at the end, which is, how good did you make people feel with the time you spent with them? What your legacy is really determined by is how it continues through others. So you could just have a nice story you told somebody, and 8 people might adopt it and use it forever. And you just continue to push the needle forward. And then how do you, at what low base do you consider yourself a winner? Sometimes just waking up in the morning makes you a winner.
Yeah.
Just not doing something really crazy or stupid can make you a winner that day. So it's the things you don't do that can help you do the things you should do. And it's all, and winning by yourself is not really winning. What's the
Right.
point of having a prize if you can't share it with someone, you can't celebrate it with other people? Everything starts with you. If you consider yourself a winner, then it's probably going to project. If you consider yourself a loser, that's going to project, and it's going to support itself going forward in that way. With that said, we got a couple people here. Omar says, good morning, rise and shine. So good to see you, Omar. And I'm going to be on Omar's show with Leslie Flowers again. We're going to have a rematch, it looks like, in the Game of Champions that Omar's putting together. And I thought maybe I'm still a judge in the LinkedIn singing contest. And I'm glad to be a judge and not a singer if that's the case. But Omar helps people win, and that makes you part of winning, even if it's not your own win. So I think people need to see it in that context. Help a kid ride a bike, you just made him a winner. Teach somebody something they wouldn't have known or been able to do without you makes them a winner. And if everybody can win together by acting collaboratively together, you don't have to carry the whole load. And usually you'll win more often as a team than you will as an individual. So I think there's something to it.
Well, that goes to Jason's comment of, if you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go as a team.
Yeah, and that team will support you when you might not have.
Yeah.
And you might support people and take your mind off of your own issues, because when you're too deeply involved in yourself, it makes it tough, because you're actually, competing with yourself at times when you should just be supporting yourself. And no one's going to support you if you don't support yourself in time. With that said, when was your winning moments that you can remember, Dave? When's a memory of you sitting on top of something with an award, or feeling like you really got recognized for something that you're real proud of?
I'm sure there are many, but the first one that comes to my mind was, and to your point about, supporting our own selves. And, as I've mentioned before on the show, as as marathon running is my new thing, and it's a mental game, and it's something about supporting yourselves. And once that negative thought gets into your brain, your performance will decrease. So to answer your question, when was the point where I was, successful or happy or recognized for my accomplishment? I have to honestly say it was my first marathon 2 years ago. And that sounds strange, and kind of, because I didn't set any world records. I wasn't first place for my age group for the whole overall competition. But the fact that I had done it, and I did it with very little training. I had been kind of coaxed into it by my buddy who had a tumor in his neck. He's an ultra marathon runner, and he started chemo 2 weeks later. But the fact that he turned to me and said, "You did a great job, and you overcame everything that you said you wouldn't be able to do it," really was more his accomplishment in some ways of pushing me along. But when I lost him at the 20-mile mark, he stopped and kind of walked more than he ran. And he said, "Go ahead and finish, be ahead of me." That's when I got in my head and I started to get the negative thinking. Where's Joe? Where's Joe? But I overcame it, and I mentally won the game, if you will. I didn't give up. And yeah, you get the little medal at the end. I didn't get on the podium. It didn't matter. It was I finished it, and it was a personal win for me. And knowing that there are other people that I had influenced through my journey of mental health, process that got me to that point, my 4 M's, and the impact that it's had on other people is really where I won.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense because, it has collateral benefit, which is added to your individual or personal benefit. It's just like a comedian who tells jokes and he could laugh, but, it's a lot more gratifying when the audience really finds it funny. I forgot to share Carrie's comment or joke of the day. Why don't we ever tell secrets on a farm? Because the potatoes have eyes and the corn has ears. Well, that was a pretty good one, Carrie. Appreciate it. That alone makes you a winner for this morning. So it doesn't take a lot to win a lot. And it also is in comparison to the virtue and the attributes you carry.
Yeah.
Winning at someone else's expense, winning by cheating someone, or doing something that isn't something that's appreciated is a hollow victory. When someone gets hurt in a football game, no team wins that day. Because everybody feels bad for that person and everybody knows that game had a responsibility. And I guess all through life, whether it's corporate, whether it's military, there's always going to be people who get out ahead and there's going to be people who don't. And then there's going to be people who suffer consequences that no one could anticipate. But that's what makes the game or whatever initiative worthwhile is it comes at a cost. When there is no cost, when there's no skin in the game, there's no real concern. I mean, even if you played cards for matchsticks or pennies, at least it's something tangible you can count. Doesn't have to be enormous, but when there's no money in the game or no skin in the game, it's like, well, I'll just always pull to an inside straight, or I'll make bets on things that aren't there. And it's the same thing in life. Another thing I think people really need to appreciate is losing is a part of winning. Losing gives you reference. Losing gives you humility. You don't feel like the top dog when you're coming in last, but it could motivate you to stop coming in last by doing more preparation. People who can lose weight by doing nothing will never continue to lose weight because it's not sustainable, just like the people who have cabbage diets. And I'm sure if you ate cabbage 3 days a week, every day of the week, you'd probably lose a lot of weight, but you'd probably be totally unhappy about having to eat lunch or dinner, knowing it's the same thing. And I think variety then goes a long way to say, hey, I've been really good at this. It's time I move to something I'm not that good at. And building muscles is a great example. When you first start out, you can't believe how painful it is or uncomfortable. And maybe you need to slow down and get lower weights because too many people get competitive before they're competitive.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'll be embarrassed to lift 8 pounds when I know I could probably lift 20. But, if you're going to go through reps and you're going to really spend time building up to something, having legitimate goals that says, yeah, I can do this comfortably. So maybe you move the needle to a little bit of discomfort, just a little bit to make you stress your muscles or whatever you're trying to train. And then it's amazing 3-4 months later what you're doing that you could have never imagined in the beginning by just letting your body, letting your mind tell you where you should be, not where you think other people want you to be. And too many people perform for others. Dave?
No, that's I was going through my head just exactly what you said was when we start doing comparison against others, that's when we lose. The end of the day, life is not going to look at our tombstone or our obituary and say, well, he didn't do this compared to him, her, them, they, group, whatever. It's going to be a story of our lives. It's not a competition. And when we start comparing against other people's successes or failures, we lose. We're not accepting what we have accomplished or not in life and how we can get better and do things. And it's a shame that we do it, but it happens, and we just need to be very conscious of, okay, I'm not where he or she is, I'm where I am. but I don't know their journey.
Mm-hmm.
And the story that I was thinking about as I went through this was my first time in Afghanistan. I was on a 3-month, pump over there where I was on for 12, 18-hour days. Let's just get through this. And my roommate was on a year-long stretch. So he would work 8 to 10, 12-hour days. And people were like, well, how come you're working so hard and he's not? And the guy looked at me and goes, I'm here for a year, dude. I'm not here for a short period. I'm trying to pace myself. So once people see that there's a difference in motivation, for example, or a long-term journey, mine was a very short stint. He had 4 times as long to be there. So why would he work 18-hour days for a year and be miserable? He knew he had to be ready to go. So it's a challenge that we have to mentally prepare ourselves for. And I'd like to go back. You haven't brought it up yet, but I see Carrie has a comment on here of I am far from winning in life. And Carrie, I just want to bring this up because I've seen you on a couple of posts here in the past episodes I've done with Don, and I would like you to give me a call, send me a note on LinkedIn if you could, because I think you are winning at life by the very fact that you are recognizing that something's not right and that you need to change. And you've made several comments that have me scratching my head, and I want to see what we can do I can talk to you offline. So
No, I
anyway.
think that's a wonderful offer. And Carrie, I would suggest if you can take advantage of it, because Dave has a lot of experience helping people. And sometimes a kind word or an important message.
I'll be right back, Don.
You bet. I'll talk to Carrie. So yeah, I would say reach out, Carrie, because I've seen these messages also, and they're self-reinforcing. Where if you continue to tell yourself whatever it is, that message continues to hold water, and it could be the reason you're not moving in the direction or as fast as possible in what would make you happy and make you a winner. And I guess it's also, how do you keep score? How do you determine if it was winning, losing, or just breaking even? But I think the key is to accentuate the positive, try to work with whatever challenges there are. And after a while, it isn't new if it happens all the time. It's the way it is. It's one thing to be surprised at, some situation or event and it takes you off guard. But, if it's like whatever it is, that's where you got to start from. That's what you have to appreciate, because at the end of the day, everybody's in a game. Everybody's playing or determining how they want to play. And more importantly, the message today is, who do you want to play with and who wants to play with you? So it's not always the value you bring to yourself, but it's the value you can bring to others to create more value for yourself. So I appreciate Dave reaching out and offering that invitation. It looks like you're both from the Navy and have had that military experience. And Dave was really focused on helping people transition. So I think it'd be a benefit to reach out to Dave. Hopefully you do, Carrie. But, we're always thinking about everybody here and wanting the best for everybody, and hopefully creating opportunities. And just for being here, you're interested in learning and learning from others. So I think that's all for the positive. And I think that's what we're here for, is to help others. We could talk to ourselves and it wouldn't take much technology. It's already built in. But when you take the time to talk to somebody else, I was just mentioning Carrie just showing up here all the time, sharing a joke, wanting to bring value, can bring value. Okay, so here we have Carrie says, I'm trying to find Dave on LinkedIn to reach out. Can't find him right now.
I'll find you,
well,
buddy.
maybe, yeah, Dave will send you a link. And have a conversation. You never know. Sometimes that's all it takes, is to get people thinking just a little bit differently. especially about yourself. No one's going to honor you when you can't honor yourself. And everybody knows everybody has something they're dealing with, and sometimes more or less depending on the situation. But we're never, no man is an island onto themselves. So the more you can connect with others, and there's people and situations wherever you're at to support whatever you need, or whatever you're looking for. When I look at winning, sometimes it's just surviving. That would be winning. Sometimes you're in a bad way and you just want to get through it. It's not like you're going to achieve anything or get any major award, but it's giving yourself credit, for playing the game. And whether you win or not, there was that song by Alison Krauss, which was actually called The Lucky Man. And in it, she says the next best thing to winning and playing is playing and losing, because it's the playing that you get the benefit from. The winning, someone's going to usually win, someone's going to usually lose. It doesn't always mean
that's the journey over the destination.
Mm-hmm.
That's journey over destination, enjoying the journey. The destination will never be reached. Sometimes you may never get to the ultimate goal that you're looking for. And if you can enjoy who you're spending time with, what you're doing with your time, that's where you win.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to that regard, just being in the game, like I say, is you're a player, and the philosophy is start where you are with what you have and go from there. Too many people, when I get this, when I become this, when I do this, well, those things may or may never happen. But whatever you have, use what you have, appreciate what you have, because that's where you're starting from. If you don't have much, you've got a higher level of opportunity. It's the people that have everything, if you can consider everything, who have more to lose, right? If you got country club memberships and you got 3 houses and 6 cars, and you're living, let's say, that life, what happens when it all goes away? And one day it will. That saying, you can't take it with you. So, who would trade places with someone who just died yesterday, right? No matter what they had, no matter what they did, they're gone. And everything that they had goes to someone else. There's a saying, there's never ownership, only rental on earth. So you only have it while you're here. And then when you're not here, it either disappears or moves to somebody else. And, be appreciative of those winning moments. And sometimes you are the person on the stage, but sometimes the people in the audience feel more like a winner than the person who won, because where do they go from there? The hard part about winning is it only lasts so long, you got to do it again. And if you never worked for it, you never understood how you got it, you'll probably never get it back again. And in that case, it is lucky and not a skill set. And then you find out sometimes the things you thought bring you the most happiness brought you the most sadness. And the things you never appreciated. Like I said, I was listening to this book by Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's partner, and they made hundreds of billions of dollars. What was interesting about both of them? They lived in the same houses they bought 40 years ago. So like Warren Buffett, I don't know, he's worth 500 billion or a huge amount of money. He never left his house, and maybe it was a nice house, but he could have bought anything. And why? It was comfortable. And, if it served him back then, it still serves him today. So it shows in some ways he didn't change. But anyway, Charlie said that he realized later in life, and it's harder when you have to realize it later, it's more preferable to do sooner, is it wasn't the money. His thing was, how did I leave people for the time I was here? How many people are going to remember me for the kindness or the generosity or the support? Because there's people who leave here, most hated people in the world, because they made their money off of other people, take advantage of this, use their leverage. And if you have nothing, you're better off than the person who had everything and has nothing today, right? And has to start fresh. Because I noticed two groups of people, when they look for opportunity, they're usually somebody, excuse me, who made it and lost it and now say, I'm going to make it back again even better. Or there's people who never made it and says, this is my time, I'm going to go for it. Either way, they're in the same boat. One has a little more experience, but then one has a little bit more frustration. And sometimes that'll drive people when you say, I got nothing to lose, and when you got nothing to lose, you got everything to gain. The people who worry are the people who want to be on both sides of the fence. I want this and that, but I don't want to give up anything. And there is no gain without some risk. There's not a bunch of odds for a sure thing. So, it's all perspective. It's all relative. It's conditional. It has context. So I know in life, Dave, you graduated from Georgia Tech. Or Georgia Tech. Yeah, I don't want to mix up with Georgia. Because when I think of Georgia, I think of Alabama's game, and then I think of Alabama's game, and I look at Vanderbilt, and they pulled off the upset of the century, you might say, taking out a number one team from an unrated team. And was interesting, the fans not only took the goalpost down, they marched with the goalpost all around the city. And that'll be a win that none of those fans or players ever forget. But it is the Goliath and Samson, not the Goliath, but the David and Goliath story, is the people who come from nowhere, the underdog, but because of commitment, because of desire, because of not having fear, because usually size makes people quiver. You go against somebody with 20 different degrees, you think, well, geez, what do I know? But it just shows you it's not the superficial, it's the internal. What makes someone tick, and it's sustainability. There's guys and gals out there that can do a lot of sprints, but they can't do a marathon. After so many yards or whatever they measure against, they just run out of gas. And again, you could look at the rabbit and the turtle, or the hare and the turtle fable, where the slow, steady, continuous progress is going to beat the fastest one out of the gate who can't sustain themselves. So
I think,
go ahead, Dave, please.
I think in that comparison, it's who has 20 degrees. Okay, well, they're 20 degrees in particular knowledge sets. But I have 1 degree in my knowledge set. They may not be co-equal. If I have a guy with 20 degrees in economics, and I studied engineering, I can't compare. And I go back to my earlier comment, when we start comparing, we start losing, because to your hare and the tortoise and the hare comparison, I run marathons. Well, I've run 2 and I'm running a 3rd one here shortly. My training plan is very different from that of a sprinter. They're building muscle for short bursts. I'm trying to get lean muscle for longer term energy efficiency. They're trying to get it right now. I need it over, in my case, 4+ hours. But when I start comparing the two, I lose. I'm never going to be an Usain Bolt. Who I found out just today, I was reading that, like, in the weeks prior to his races, he eats McDonald's McNuggets, which seems counterintuitive to someone of a healthy lifestyle. And it's irrelevant here. But when I compare, people with diets, when I start looking at that guy's, taking a lot of carbs, this guy's taking a lot of protein, I don't know what they're training for. I see guys out on the run. I was out on a long run yesterday. Some guys are walking, some guys are sprinting, some guys are running my same pace or a little faster. I don't know where they are in their run. They could be just starting at mile 1 while I'm on mile 20, and I can't compare. So when we start doing the comparison, we lose. If we start looking internally to what is my overall goal in life and doing the analysis of what it is that makes me happy, you can't help but win.
Yeah, well, and I think you stimulated a thought I had, is really the only competition you have is yourself. You're the one who says that was great or that wasn't. You're the one who says I'm making progress even though I don't always see it every day. You're going to have an off day. You're going to have situations where you expected more and got less, but that's, again, the journey. And it makes the win even better after suffering a loss. The thing everybody really loves the most is comeback stories. Someone who's got all this talent and ability and they just keep winning, and it happens. Like in tennis, people could have a 16, 17-year winning career where they're always 1 or 2 or 3 in the rankings. But it's the person who suffered an injury and had to rehab and come back and train. And when they do win, they become somebody that people look up to, because winning takes courage. It takes courage to do it, and it takes courage to accept the results of it. And that's why eventually they have different divisions. They'll have the elderly or the senior division, like in golf. That keeps people relevant after their real or younger career is over. And they've got early competitions for people as little as probably 5 years old. And, there's football games with 8, 9, 10-year-old kids out there playing that, the chances of making the NFL, you got a better chance of getting hit by lightning in most cases, but it doesn't stop people from doing it. And there's a lot of people who don't really want to be the NFL. They just want to be on their high school team or college team or play with a bunch of buddies. And I think that's the key, is how good of a sportsman are you, or sportswoman? And sportsmanship is something that used to be more valued. The person who admitted defeat when the game was over, the person who shook hands with someone, even though maybe they don't like to or want to, but they wanted to show themselves as being fair and honest. And you got to tip your hat to the people who honestly beat you. But, they beat you at a score or a game. They didn't beat you in life, and they didn't beat you directly. It's just one time, one contest, get back off your horse, get back on your horse. The saying was, it's never how many times you fall down, it's how fast you get up. Because you're going to get knocked down by so many things. How do you get yourself back into a good mental state? How do you value yourself? And then what do you do to support yourself when there isn't a lot of support out there? And some people may go to the lowest common denominator, which is, I'm just going to take a walk. I'm just going to have my favorite food tonight, and at least you won at something you had control over, because you can walk, you can eat certain things. You can make a phone call to someone who always perks you up. And how many times have you changed from the time you got on a call or a meeting to the time you left it? And all of a sudden it was life-changing. Kelly always tells me a story of a vet who had planned to end their life that evening and had everything in place. And it just happened. Someone stopped and smiled at him, never even talked to him. And that was enough to put him in a different direction. And in a sense, they're on a free ride, because since it didn't happen every day they have is a day they wouldn't have had. And if you looked at things as a gift instead of a curse or a blessing, or even if it doesn't look like the future is that bright, be grateful for what you did have. Give yourself credit for that. Why would it be absolute, especially when the default is always a loser and feeling bad? Because, after a while, who cares? They say winning is Well, let me recognize Kelly because I just mentioned Kelly. Kelly must have heard.
Perfect timing.
Kelly is just not one of the best, but in my opinion, one of the best on LinkedIn. And it's not because we've worked together so often, but because of her good heart, because of her generosity of spirit and of giving. I mean, working with wheelchairs for warriors, coming off that conference for the police officers who had been challenged in their careers and in their life, and giving that helping hand. And you have no idea how important that is to someone who sees darkness and all of a sudden sees light. And it's because someone opened a window for them or opened a door or just a kind, happy thought. Most people are pretty good at being resilient and strong, but sometimes they get knocked down. That they need a helping hand. They need someone to be with them, encourage them. And that's where support groups are so important. In essence, this is a support group for professionals because everybody can look at winning in different aspects of their life, different ways. Yeah, and Kelly, your ears should be burning because they deserve the compliments and courtesies, and I think that teaches all of us what other nice things can we do that really don't cost a lot of time or money. I was at this speaker was saying, how many people thank people when they do something nice to you? And it's like, let's take an example of an airplane. Well, you had a great ride and everybody was friendly. When you leave the plane, do you thank the staff or the pilot for a great flight? Thanks for bringing in safely. And then the next statement was, don't just say thank you. Explain what you're thanking him for. Thank you for a safe flight. Thank you for your quality service. Thank you for this. What's another 3-4 words, but it gives that person something different because 90% of the people won't say thank you. The 10% who say thank you just say thank you as a off the cuff remark and don't think about it. But look in someone's eyes and say, you are just really special today and you made things happen for me. You know how gratifying that is to someone who usually is taken for granted, usually isn't very appreciative. I mean, in essence, it's a tip that requires no currency, and you've got the ability to do it all day long, and it takes practice because what's easy to do is easy not to do. Well, I could have thanked him, but I decided, why? I'll never see him again, and at
That's
that
exactly why you should.
That's right. But I'm saying that what it says is I only thank people who are going to keep helping me. Anybody who helps me and I'll never see again, why bother? And you can make the same case for tips, right? Why tip that person? Especially if you're in a new town, new restaurant you may never go to. But, until I used to work for tips in my only job, working at a grocery store. And that made a difference. And when I worked, a dime was a dime, and a quarter could really get you somewhere. I was making $1.15 an hour, So if someone gave you a quarter tip, it's like someone giving you a $5 tip if you're making 20. But when I was making $1.15 an hour, the average income was about $12,000 a year. So you could live on $240 a week. And one last thing brings a new thing. When I took my mother to a 65th high school reunion and met a lot of people, and she went to a really big high school in Erie, Pennsylvania. And gosh, there must have been 400 people there at 83. And her graduating class was huge. And all these people had a couple stories. One was she graduated in 1943. And that was right in the middle of the war. And I think 80% of the boys were already overseas before their high school graduation. And then you hear the stories. One guy was a prisoner of war. And the story he had was when he went into the prisoner of war camp, the first question everybody asked, what is the number one song on the hit parade? Everyone wanted it because that was a big deal back there, the radio and music. And it just happened The song was Home Sweet Home or something, on the range or whatever it was. And it was kind of interesting. But until you've seen the trials and tribulations of what people went through and how they continue to do better with time when they could have just given up, is so empowering to others. And I think and that's where reading books, reading biographies, reading life stories, you can really relate to it and feel how lucky you were. And not only that, how grateful you should be for the ones who were there before you and did things that maybe were unbelievably brave. And if you ask most of these people, they didn't think it was that brave. They just thought it was their responsibility. That was their duty. They didn't take a bow. If anything, they thought about the people who didn't make it and the people who gave more than they did. So it does give you context. It gives you perspective. And like we say all the time, you got to have a sense of gratitude. Without gratitude, you just have a very superficial situation, especially the people think everything's coming to them. Everybody owes them something. They deserve more than everybody else. They don't mind cutting in lines or doing whatever it takes, and they go on and continue their life. So Dave, how did you feel when you got promoted in the Navy or when you graduated college? Did you feel like some sense of accomplishment?
In both cases, so I'll go with the Navy. The first two promotions, ensign to lieutenant JG and lieutenant JG to lieutenant, are almost gimmies. They're okay. You've done your time, but the lieutenant commander is where you first start to be, recognized and compared against your other peers. And someone says, okay, I like him or her. I don't like him or her. And I want to make a tie-in here very quickly. Is you bring up college graduation, and in both cases, very early on, I was told in my college career, "Oh, I'm sorry. I think I've brought this up before. You didn't have a high SAT. You'll never make it through tech. It was nice to meet you." I was an administrator at orientation telling me this, and it was kind of okay. Well, I'm going to take that challenge and do whatever I can. And on the military side, I was a lieutenant. Senior lieutenant. I was about to be passed over for lieutenant commander. I lateral transferred, and the new community was a year ahead of my previous community. So the CEO looked at me and she said, "You'll never promote in my community. You just don't have what it takes in all your fitness reports and your career path. You'll never make it." And in both cases, it was a prove you wrong situation. And it was very gratifying on one hand. So I felt like a winner because I'd proven them wrong. And at the same time, I know I got through them and I won because I did the work. It took the practice of the failures, the resiliency to come back. And those two words are key to everything. Just unpacking what you said the last time is I still have an email so when I made lieutenant commander, I was in Qatar. I was supposed to be going into Iraq that day that the results came out. And they were 7 or 8 hours ahead, I think, in Qatar. And the plane broke down, whatever happened, we didn't go. And I get this call at like 11 o'clock at night. And my petty officer comes to my hooch, says, "Hey, sir, you need to call your CO." And I was like, or my XO, executive officer. And I said, "Well, if the XO is calling me, that means I didn't make lieutenant commander. So I'm not going to call him back." Well, he called back 3 or 4 times. At this point, I'm exhausted. I've been sitting out in the sun all day. I'm ready to go to bed, but I'm wide awake going, okay, I'll call the XO. And as soon as I call him, Steve says, "Hey, Dave, it's Steve. I got the skipper for you." And I said, "Skipper never tells you the bad news. They only tell you the good news." And she looked at me. She said, "Hey, Dave, I'm glad to tell you you made lieutenant commander." And I said, "Well, ma'am, it's almost midnight here. I'm supposed to be in Iraq right now. I really didn't need this joke. This is not funny." You could hear her grabbing the papers going, "Hey, no, I'm looking at it right here. Snell D, last 4 of your social." I'm like, "Oh crap, I made it." was very satisfying. In the end, I didn't get much sleep that night. I had to make some calls to my dad, who was also a Georgia Tech grad, ROTC cryptologist, who commissioned me and actually was my guest speaker at my retirement. Said, hey, I got some news for you. I actually made it. And I will be the first to admit I got a little petty with that promotion, because I got back from Qatar and the skipper said, well, I can't wait to, put the oak leaves on your collar and swear you in as an 04. And I said, sorry, ma'am, you're not going to do that. She's, why am I not going to do that? I said, well, my uncle is going to do it. He was he was a civilian contractor at NSA at the time, and said, part of me was sitting here going, yeah, it's a little petty. You didn't believe in me. Mm-hmm. He always believed in me. He's a retired Crippy who you knew, and I know you didn't like him, but he believed in me. So I didn't have her promote me. I had my uncle do it. So it was a very good satisfaction, but it was the email that I want to talk about real quick. Was because I had lateraled into the community the way I had so late in my lieutenant time, nobody knew who I was. I was in a command at NSA of thousands of people. And Andre Feldman, I'll call him out here, I've still got the email in my files, says, hey, and I almost remember this almost verbatim, is, hey, you're causing quite a stir back here because nobody knows who you are, and they don't know why or how you made lieutenant commander. But I'd sit them back and tell them flat out, yes, I know Dave Snell. I know him quite well, and he never gave up on himself or the mission, and he did what he had to do to make things happen. That's a pretty good close to quote. But it was a great satisfaction to know that I had done everything I could, despite there's some more to the story I won't go into here, but I won in some aspects there, because I'd proven people wrong. I'd shown them that, look, you don't always have the answers. When you compare me to everybody else, no, I'm not on their same path. I still made it. I still did something that mattered in the end.
Yeah, well, it kind of shows there's more than one route to the destination also.
That was it.
Well, and I think that's key, is some people have their own way of doing things, and a lot of people do it differently, but they do achieve the goal they're looking for, maybe at a different time frame, maybe with different values. But again, once you're there, you're there. Now what? How many people are one-hit wonders? People that create a hit song and never could get the second one. The people who got lucky one day, if you want to call it that, and maybe ran a pass back 100 yards. But can they do it a second and third time? So it's the sustainability, and how does that integrate and incorporate in your life setting at that point? Right? If you're just starting a family and you're just getting going, you're in a whole different mindset than when you're about to retire and everybody's settled and everything's comfortable. And life will throw you curveballs. You just never know one day to the next. Some days you wake up and you feel like $1 million and you go to sleep that night feeling like a pauper. Some days you wake up feeling like a pauper and you end up going to bed thinking like a millionaire. But I think that philosophy of not competing, but saying, hey, if they can do it, I can do it. I know Jim. I know Jim really well. And I feel that if Jim could do it, not taking anything away from him, I could do it. But here's the beauty of it. Jim might help you get to where he was, even though maybe no one helped him. And that's saying, if you can't do it, could we do it? Or could we help you get closer? And maybe at a certain point you decide the journey was better than the destination. You change your destination, or the journey provides you with a better destination, an opportunity you would have never been able to see at the front end of something. But during the middle, you start making those pivots, those adjustments. Or you say, I thought this was going to be more fun and this isn't fun and I'm tired of it. And there's nothing wrong with changing course or just giving up. If you ran the course, if you decided I'm doing it because I found a better way or a different way, and everything is a stepping stone versus a destination. And until you get Mike Tyson had that quote, Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? And then the plan goes out the window, and then you're in the moment. So I think that's another concern, is over planning, overthinking, getting totally prepared and never going anywhere. How many people are getting ready for the trip of a lifetime that they never will take, right? Because they don't have the luggage, they don't have the language skills. I mean, it's always what I don't have, instead of, hey, I trust myself to fit in, go with the flow. And really, most cases, nothing is blood and guts, right? No one's going to get hurt. No one's going to have any irreparable harm. You might have some impact on your ego. You might feel like embarrassed or disappointed or frustrated. Maybe you should for the moment. But you're a real loser is after not achieving something, you now discount yourself, minimize yourself. And like I was mentioning to Carrie, if you continue to loop that, I'm not good enough, I'm not this, that's what you're hearing. And I know it's hard for people, because so many people would rather say, I knew it was going to happen this way, so I was right, versus, hey, I don't know. Give yourself credit for not knowing. Give yourself credit for responding to the moment. I mean, can you get ready for a snowstorm that's 3 months away? When you're actually in a sunny, wonderful place. I'll give you an example that was, Anne, my wife, she's into yoga. And about, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years ago, they had a yoga and cooking retreat in Italy. So like 7, 8 gals got together, flew out to some beautiful place in Italy, had a week in a castle, and they just had cooking classes and then yoga classes. So make a long story short, there happened to be that volcano in Iceland. And because of the volcano, nobody could get out of Italy. And I got a call, and everybody's going crazy. We're stuck here. We're afraid, and we don't know what to do. And I said, listen, if you're getting freaking out, I'll get you out of there. And I did find a plane that would go through Morocco. You could fly south, you couldn't fly north. So you had to go to Morocco or some strange, interesting place. And it was I don't know, 5, 6 grand, because everybody was trying to get that flight. But I said, you're in Italy. Nothing's wrong in Italy. Have a ball. And they did. They rented a nice place. They had to do their clothes every day at the laundromat, and they had to buy their vegetables and cook it together. And it was the best week ever. So what could have been tragic or a calamity turned out to be a very worthwhile addition to what they had. And sometimes, not sometimes, in my case, I always learn more on the way down. Success was never as good a teacher as failure, because it makes you accept responsibility and accountability, and even if it wasn't totally your fault, it was your fault for getting to know that person who took you down or take that decision. But, it's also interesting is no one seems to care about what's going on around them until it happens to them. And what happens to them happens to somebody else every day. But when it hits close to home, all of a sudden it becomes more important. And sometimes, you just got to say, got the raw end of the deal or the short end of the stick. And then what's it going to take? And sometimes that's all it takes is, hey, I learned my lesson. I'm never going to do that the same way. I would never say I'm never going to do that again. But that's a choice, I mean, and some people, I think Dave made a wonderful point up front, is don't judge people. If someone likes chocolate ice cream over vanilla, what difference does it make? It's like tomato, tomato, potato, potato. It's like 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Whatever floats your boat, as long as you don't hurt anybody else in the process, I'm cool with it. I got a hard enough time dealing with my own life, let alone trying to get involved with somebody else's life. And again, you never know with the circumstances. You never know how they were brought up. You never know who their friends were or weren't. Life is a mystery, but it's also just a wonderful opportunity. if you confront it that way. If you always think tomorrow is going to be better, I don't know why, and if I don't know why, I'm going to do myself a favor and try to do a little bit more. What else could you do that you haven't done? And I think you can reach down and find a reserve, because there's so many people who say they couldn't do something, but in the moment they find that strength. They find that, how did someone, 110-pound woman lift up the front of a Volkswagen when their kid was under it? There's no scientific evidence that could happen, but it happens. And if it can happen like that, it could happen to anybody. So I'm always looking at the life as half full instead of half empty. But sometimes it's 3/4 full or 3/4 empty. So, you have to risk to it. So how has a sense of humor helped you become a better winner?
The fact that I just have to laugh at some things every single day. I just can't. I will say there was a time where I took life too seriously. The things were just critical, and it was maybe it was the military, the Navy mindset in me, that very serious person. I had one of my airmen, George, took me aside one day after we'd been back from Iraq for a while, and he said, "I got to tell you, Dave, I like Dave. I don't like Lieutenant Commander Dave." Because I was hard charging, I was pushing, I was angry, I was, humor. And then when I step back and I say, "Hey, life is too short to really take this too seriously sometimes." Sense of humor is critical. If you don't have the ability to laugh at yourself, which I didn't have the ability for a long time, then what are you doing? You're not going to enjoy what you're experiencing. You're not going to see the bloom. You're going to see the doom. And that's not a very healthy, happy time to experience, because as you've pointed out many, many times, if you are what you attract, if you're happy, you're going to attract happy. If you're thinking negative thoughts, like you just said, and how I can't, then you won't. There is some law of attraction here in the world, that you get what you expect, a little bit of what you project, that will come back to you. You exude negative, you'll receive negative. You think positive, you'll get positive. So sense of humor was key, and and in the military, you have to laugh, and you have to be able to you have to have some very thick skin, take some jabs at yourself or from others. I didn't do it very well in the beginning. I got thicker skin as we went along, because that's how you had to live. And it's not just a military thing; it's a life thing. You have to be able to laugh at, okay, I had a slip up here, I messed up, but life went on. Nothing is forever. It's not going to last for eternity just because you made one mistake. Laugh at yourself. Okay, move on.
Well, yeah, and that's beautiful, because my two kids, they were always growing up self-conscious. They were afraid of what people thought or didn't think. And we might go in a restaurant or something, and I'd say something, and shh, people will hear you, or you're embarrassing.
My daughter every time.
Or drop me off at the end of the block. I don't want you dropping me off where everybody can see you, or whatever. And someone told me that there's been a study, and it says when you die, the average amount of people to your funeral will be 7. But if it's raining, that will go down to 4. And I said, well, look at kids, no matter what you do in life, on a rainy day, half of the people who went to pay respects won't be there. Another 4 would have been there no matter who you are or what you were. And look at it that way. Plus, how many people have you seen here you'll ever remember anything they said or did? Because you don't. So when you put it in context where you can only win or learn, but you can't lose, then it's a win-win situation. And if the people who care about you the most are going to always be there for you, you don't need any more than that. And if you worry about a stranger over a loved one, you're discounting the loved one and giving too much value to the stranger, which then puts you in a negative situation. So, take your wins, learn from your losses, get back on your feet. And if you can't do more, think better. It starts with thoughts. Thoughts become your attitude. Your attitude turns into your actions, and then your actions turn into more actions. So it's a process. And just be glad you're alive. I mean, so many people work so hard and live a short life. Doesn't mean their life wasn't as valuable or more, but you've got the opportunity right now to do anything you want. And why not come out ahead every day by saying, did a little more than I thought I could, learned a little bit more, and over time, little things done right compound into much bigger things, more sustainable things. And it is your moral compass that keeps you in the right direction. So we had a wonderful show, Dave.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough. Can't thank the audience enough. And final thoughts before we bid farewell.
Well, first, my apologies for the in and out and the confusion with the repairman. But I think it was a great discussion as always, and it refreshed some memories. And if just a good reminder that if our mental state is right, that if we think positive, good things will happen. My dad used to always say that good things happen to good people.
Yeah, I think your dad's a wise man and had even more experience than you did with all the extra years he's had since as an advantage. And it is philosophies like that will keep you on the right road. So I actually value this episode more than others because there was that edginess to it that you never know when this could happen or will happen, and you appreciate things more. And the other thing, Dave, is it is therapeutic because people bring things up that now bring things up in yourself that you might not have really taken into consideration, and that takes you into the next phase of the day, which is coming in with a lot new thoughts, a lot of energy, because just like people got to get going in the morning and they say exercise is good, stimulates your mind. Well, thought is good when it's quality thought and conversation because now you're more alive. Plus, looking at yourself when you started the show to now, you're as calm as a cucumber, right? I mean, it seems like everything is just cool. In the beginning, you're so ready for what you don't know that it kind of makes you contort in ways that you probably wouldn't. So, anyways, every experience can be a good experience. Life is worth living, and winning is all contextual and relative. So with that, come back tomorrow. We got Beverly Glazer with us, who's our every Tuesday. Wednesday, we got Carol back, was on vacation last week. And Thursday, we got Kelly back.